I'm trying to make it in the world that isn't fair, and nothing's ever going my way under the curse of despair. I tried to reach it first, but I fail, and no one's ever there. When the pain starts to hurt, the who to tell. Uncomfortable, can't seem to make it out of my position. I'm here all the time, can't seem to break repetition. You don't get recognition for the good, fuck up your reputation for the hood, but you're missing in the woods. Wish I could get back right everything that went wrong, so when I get put on, I'ma sing it in the song. Give y'all something to relate to, have you thankful for the knowledge. Not saying I make it right, don't be praying for a promise. They say that life's a bitch, so I'm a cover. So greedy and stingy, like I'ma never get another one. She's starving, hungry, with loads of money, I'ma suffer for the stress. We wrote the test and let it burn like Usher. Fathom this.
Fathom this. This is Dangerous Thoughts. I'm your host, Monuente Reme, and I will be doing this show for the very first time with my glasses on because I'm old now and I can't see shit. Welcome to Dangerous Thoughts. You know, this is a show where we dig deep into things that sometimes people may not want to talk about. And me and my co-host here, Tyson Strasberg, you can see him right there. Right there. Yeah. We don't give a shit. We're totally down to talk about anything. We don't fear anything. And this is a show where we dive deep into weird topics, strange topics, fringe topics. But you know, it's just dangerous thoughts. Bottom line, we will go anywhere, anytime. And this week we have our special guest, Mark Fiorentino, who's going to talk to us about the unified theory of physics, which is super cool. He's also going to discuss, actually, let me read his bio. Author Mark Fiorentino has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory ever since hearing about it when he was 10. He's worked for many years in high-tech industry, including IBM. He's going to talk to us about simulation theory and NDEs, near-death experiences. He wrote a book called Master of Reality. It's going to be a great guest. We're going to get into some deep doo-doo tonight. All right. So on to the monologue. Here we go. Ukraine, Israel. Like I said last week, world leaders, they just seem to keep getting away with genocide. You got to love the human species. Trump, what scares me? Not him. He doesn't scare me. I don't think that he's going to really have an effect on us. I mean, this is a nice little play that they're putting up, and he's going to run. But what scares me more than anything is there are real people out there, like almost 50% of the public in this country that trust that man. That's what scares me. There's all these human beings out there that think that buy his rhetoric and believe it. I was in 7-Eleven the other day. Just last night, actually. And there was this dipshit, American friend of mine, fellow American dipshit, behind the counter that was telling me all about why I should vote for Trump and that he was an outsider that had broken into Washington and was going to change everything for the poor man. And I was like, are you fucking dumb? Are you really? Like, I love you and I want to meet in the middle and I want to, end the what's it called, Tyson?
Oh, this partisanship,
Yeah.
We want to end
what's the word I'm looking for? I hate when I can't find vocabulary.
The dichotomy between the two, the partisanship, the separation.
We're so split up. The country is so split between morons and people that have at least a little bit of logic. But this guy, I'm like, why do you think Trump's an outsider? The man was a billionaire. He's always been a 1% elite. He's always worked for those people. He's always made his money as a slumlord stepping on the poor. Why do you fools think that he cares about you? Anyway, the 737 MAX 9 is going back into the air and down to the ground. Don't get on that fucking plane. I'm not doing it. I am not getting on that fucking thing. Not a chance. Not a chance. It's like the first time they flew that thing, it had a little hitchy-magitchy at the end of the airplane that pilots were like, I'm flying fine. But the hitchy-magitchy would be like, no, you're not. We're going to put you into the ground. And pilots didn't even have the option to turn the thing off, weren't trained how to turn the thing off at least. And it flew into the ground a couple times, once in India, once in maybe Moscow. I don't remember where the other one crashed. But now the door's blowing off. You get a nice view But if you get a nice view above 25,000 feet, you're also going to get a nice skydiving lesson with no parachute. Fuck that airplane. I'm going to see my parents Wednesday, and I'm going to check every time I'm on that plane. I'm flying American Airlines, by the way. They did participate in 9/11 and knocking down our World Trade Center, but that was 20 years ago. So, I trust them now. They're not flying 737 MAX 9s. So I'm flying American. Anyway, finally, lastly, Manu's pick of the week for shit to watch. Watch American Nightmare on Netflix. I always make the argument on this show that cops, pigs, police officers are inherently sucky people. But watch American Nightmare if you're one of the few middle-class Americans left. I know there's a few hundred of you out there. If you still believe cops are good people and you've been raised to believe that, watch American Nightmare on Netflix. Crips, Bloods, Hamas. There's nobody worse than the cops. There's no bigger gang in the United States, except for maybe the CIA, but they don't come knocking on your door, right? Because they're already listening to everything you say, do, and think through these computer systems in our phones and our cars, and they're watching. So they know what you're up to. And if you're not a bad guy, they're probably not coming. But cops, on the other hand, they're out there in their little Sharky squad cars, and they're looking to fuck you up. They are looking to fuck up your day. It actually, they should say that on the side of the car. It should say, if you're in the right place and the right time for us to take advantage of your body and mind, we will do it because we're cops.
Or so we're changing it from to protect and serve to protect and fuck up your day.
We are here to fuck up day, to harass and unnerve. Yeah, twice this, in the last week, in the last 2.5 weeks, to be fair, cops have fucked with me twice. I've got 2 court dates. One, because some stupid city bus driver said that I backed up into her. The truth of the matter is I went around the front of her, and it made her angry because she was stopped and she didn't like getting passed on the left. It scared her. So she shook her fist at me. And I think earlier that day, she had crashed her bus and put a little scratch on the back of it. And so she decided to write down my license plate number, call the city gang, the police officers, whether they work for the state or your local city bureaucracy. They're assholes, all of them, except for homicide detectives. Homicide detectives and missing persons, if you work for those 2 parts of the police service, I have some respect for you guys. But the rest of you fucking pigs, God, I hate them. Lastly, fuck Wall Street and everyone who works there. Giant casino at the center of our culture, trusted in the hands of assholes and morons. Don't fuck around with Wall Street. If you want to know more about that, read some Richard Reich, The System. Much smarter than me, says it much better than me. But Wall Street is bullshit. Oh, that is another great thing to watch. It's called I'll tell people to watch it next week. Great documentary about this guy that created Malaysia. He created this thing called 1MDB, development fund for a country, and then stole all the money and gave it to Hollywood and hung out with movie stars and did cocaine. His name was Joe Low or something like that. Documentary on him was pretty good. Okay, so thank you. Monologue's over. Did I mention subscribe if you're listening to Dangerous Thoughts? There's a like button. There's a subscribe button down below. You should hit it, punch it, take the keypad, touch it, because if you do that, then we won't have to beg you to send money. Otherwise, we'll beg. I'm not above it. I don't know about Tyson, but I'm not above begging. So please like and subscribe and tell people about Dangerous Thoughts. Share it on your social media. There's my Dangerous Thoughts pitch. Tyson, what's been going on this week? Anything interesting happening in your life?
A lot of fun. Went to a funeral for my Uncle Bob. That was
good times.
Yes.
Sorry, man.
It was kind of hard. It was my father's side of the family, and it was good to see everybody. I'll say that. It was good to see everybody. Quick question for you, and I think we talked about this a little bit before we got on the air. Do you know the difference between a cowboy and a hick? What's the difference between a cowboy and a hick?
A cowboy works for a living.
Let me get the trusty prop here.
All right.
Let me get up, and I got to take off my headset, but I'll put the microphone where I think you can still hear me. All right. So, get the hat on here.
You look like a cowboy.
This is a cowboy.
Yes.
This is a cowboy. Now, this is a hick.
That's really funny. I think there's people out there laughing. That's really you do that one. Yeah, you look really bad like that. Don't wear your hat like that. Yeah, never walk into a bar like that unless you're in like Tennessee or something. Maybe is Tennessee a hick place? Florida. You can walk into it. I don't know.
You're gonna have to talk to Mark about that.
Places where they're dumb. Oh no, is our guest from Alabama or Florida or Tennessee?
Florida.
Oh shoot. Well, he's not a hick though.
But his stepson is a police officer, so he might have something to say.
Oh really? Well, fuck his stepson. I still like him.
Oh boy, this is we.
Hey, look, I got nothing against the guy. Just his kid. It's a different, totally different world. No, listen, Mark. If your kid's a good kid and you raised him right, hopefully he's out there doing the right thing in the police force. Look, I just think that we need some real reform in the police force. And I joke. I hope your kid's a nice kid, actually, out there like protecting and serving like they're supposed to do. Knowing the little bit that I spoke to you before the show, I bet that is possibly true. But then knowing kids, they rebel from their parents. He could be a total prick. We never know.
It's not individuals are individuals. There's a lot of good cops out there. What I think the problem is the institution gives them too much power. And what's the saying? Yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's very few positions that have the kind of power of a police. A police officer could pull over an admiral and arrest him, and it could pull over a judge and arrest him, could pull over a Secret Service officer and arrest. I mean, cops have phenomenal power.
But they rarely do, because all those guys are public service people. They
rarely do, but they have arrested judges. They've arrested attorneys.
Freaking bus driver for them to this is my local bureaucracy bus driver. I trust him.
I'm just saying that I think they have a little too much power. That's the problem. I see the need for police officers. I just think they have a little too much power.
Especially the new ones, right? Especially the new guys, the beat cops. Like, you should have to earn levels of power in police instead of the absolute.
Well, it says on the side of their car, to protect and serve. When was the last time you saw a police officer serve? Now, I'm not saying they don't. There are plenty of good cops that do charities and do serve, but usually they're out there looking for a speeder, and I get why.
Quotas, but blah, funding their organization, taking your shit, putting you in the system. That's really what they're.
And I've been pulled over by two types: the kind that are just, hey, you were speeding and he let me off with a warning, and he was really nice. And I've had others that screamed up, "What the fuck do you think you were doing? 50 and a 45."
Yeah, that's what happened to me. That's the second story. First was the bus, and then it was 52 and a 45, and I got the 50 and a 40. Unbelievable, 10 miles an hour, and I was like, officer, just a week ago I got a ticket, and he was like, well, that's what court's for.
Tyson, your cat is losing its mind.
Your cat's losing its mind back there. All right.
She got into my stash. I mean, she
all right. So
she got into some catnip.
Yeah. Mark Fiorentino, our guest this week, has never done drugs. But we're going to bring him on. Actually, he did. He smoked a little pot when he was a kid. He told me backstage. He shares his views on how the universe really works based on his study and research of Einstein's unified field theory. He will discuss how the applications of Einstein's theory can be used to travel through space, renewable energy, and future technology. He'll also talk about the connection to conspiracy theories, including UFOs and alien technology that they use, as well as other controversial topics such as near-death experiences. I'm really excited to talk to this man. He was very interesting backstage. Let's bring him on. Here's Mark Fiorentino, author of Master of Reality, which you can go grab at Amazon.com.
Right.
Hey, Mark, how are you? I'm sorry for
Hello.
insulting your children before I brought you on the air.
Well, I don't get into politics at all in any of my.
Good idea. Good
But
idea.
he is a good man. I'm very proud of him. And,
Cool, man.
I love him, and all of my wife's kids and my kids too as well.
Awesome.
So that's what's the good thing. You gotta love. Love
No, you
is
gotta
important.
love for sure,
Love
for
is
sure. And I always try to show cops love. They just rarely show it back. But I'm sure your kid is probably doing well out
He's
there.
a
What does he
good
do?
man.
Does he work in a particular division?
He
Or?
does the patrol car stuff, but he's gone back and forth from the office to patrolling and so forth.
How old is he?
He's 40 now, or
How long has he worked there?
oh gosh, I'm not really sure. Maybe 10 years or so. He did the whole National Guard, the Army, National Guard, went to college while he was in National Guard. So
He's
was
always been a service oriented.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
it's a long
That's good.
path that
Yeah.
that got to that point. So he's been doing it for quite a while now.
Cool.
So he seems to like it. Yeah.
I'm happy that he's doing it well. So let's get into some of your stuff here. Tell me about Master of Reality and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I got into it from very early on as a child. The nuns at my church wanted us to find a saint born on our birthday, and in my case, I couldn't find one on March 14th, but I did find that Albert Einstein was born on my birthday.
Oh, cool.
So I started reading. I got out the Encyclopedia Britannica. I remember sitting on the floor in the living room, opening the book and reading it. And fascinating human being. And then I read about the unified field theory, and I thought this is the best idea that I've ever heard. And from that point on, I had an interest in science, and then eventually led to an interest in UFOs because I wanted to know how they flew.
Yeah.
We obviously weren't using jets or rockets or anything like this. So I figured at a pretty early age, you're using a spatial bias field of some sort that exhibited an anti-gravity effect. So that remained in the back of my mind for many years as I read about UFOs, trying to find somebody that would mention how they worked. And so that's how I got into, and eventually this book, The Master of Reality, was basically talking about the theory of super relativity, which is a unified field theory. Which you may ask, well, what is a unified field theory?
Yeah, break that down.
Everybody needs to know that.
Yeah.
According to Einstein, electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. That fundamental field before the year 1905 was considered to be the ether, which is another name for space. But the ether had properties, and it still has measurable properties such as permittivity and permeability. So there's something out there. But after the year 1905 and the Michelson-Morley experiment, they abandoned the ether. Big mistake, and I go over that in high detail in my book.
Cool.
Because without the ether, the fundamental field, nothing.
Yeah, there's got to be
sense.
something there. That doesn't make any sense.
The fundamental field is the building block of everything. So particles, electrons, photons, everything are convolutions. They're twists that are persistent. They don't unravel. And that's why we have an existence, and they all move. And without that motion, which is something that I've just worked out the formulation for, I understand now how and why particles move, and that's going to go
all particles.
All particles,
talking quarks to anything.
Yeah, it's a dipole phenomena in which
does it have anything to do with the spooky
action at a distance?
Yeah.
Well, force,
quantum entanglement. Right?
Quantum entanglement. There we go.
Actually,
thank you, smart guy.
It's due to a gravitational field that's emitted from electrostatic fields and magnetic fields. And gravitational fields, there's a new type of gravity I discovered while working in my lab at home, and gravity 2, which is emitted from the North Pole or the positive pole of dipoles like magnets electrostatic fields like capacitors. Um,
So let's go back to the unified theory. You got the field, which is
the fundamental
the
field,
fundamental field,
so good,
which is space.
yeah,
And-
space. But what is it?
yeah.
It was at that time in 1905 and before, all the way from Newton's time to that time, was considered to be physically a quasi-elastic solid. What does that mean? Quasi meaning like if I put held a magnet out into outer space where there's nothing, a field would come around it. And as soon as I move it, that space would snap back into a Euclidean, flat geometry again. So the geometry of space is affected by the magnetic field, which is a force. Same thing with gravity, same thing with the electrostatic field. So that's quasi. Elastic means it can do little stretches and contractions and twists clockwise and counterclockwise. That's how the particles are built. And so that's the elastic and solid, the most important part of all. Not like wood, steel. I'm not talking like that. That which is continuous. That thing out there, it's not made of parts. That thing is you could think of it like a rubber band, sort of a giant elastic material that's continuous. No particles. The particles exist within it. They move within it, not through it, not like a bullet through the air.
Some things move through it, right? Some things, like you said,
the
permeate the
particles change
space.
position.
Okay.
And what
Like
happens
light?
is like light. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as light moves through space, what happens is wherever the light is moving, that space twists and pops into the shape of the photon as it moves through space. So space is constantly, there's a transformation going on, and that's in part what limits its speed. But I now have the formula for the constancy of the speed of light, and it's going in my next paper. And
Gravity is a weak field, and electromagnetism a strong field.
correct.
Is there a dichotomy between the two, and how does that relate to, say, dark energy or dark
Yeah,
matter?
I was going to ask about dark matter too. Good one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Leave those two out, dark energy and dark
Okay.
matter, because
It's going to get complicated.
well, dark energy is going to most likely be proven not to exist, really. Dark
Really?
matter, I attribute to neutron stars and black holes that are not easily detectable, that exist within galaxies, which is why the galaxy is turning at the unexpected rate and not flying apart. It's all that hidden dark matter, not really little hidden dark matter particles that are not yet discovered. It's actual heavy masses that are within
like black
space
holes.
that you can't really see easily if they're not near something.
Have we
So,
found one at the center of every universe, or are there
you
are
mean
there
a
some galaxies? Sorry, are there
Galaxy.
some
galaxies, right?
galaxies that don't have black holes in them?
As far as I know, they're at just about every one. I haven't seen the data, but it's like 99.9%. The only places where they wouldn't be in the center is where two galaxies collided and the black holes maybe merged and then went off and left the other galaxy,
Flew off
becoming a
different directions.
blob. Yeah.
So yeah,
But
let me tell you.
basically they're in every galaxy, and that's covered in my cosmology
But that's a
theory.
supermassive. We have millions of stellar black holes.
Stellar black holes. We also have Titan-sized black holes, which, like the Great Attractor, have you ever heard of that?
No, tell me about it.
The Great Attractor is a gravitational anomaly. It is an immense mass that pulls on the Milky Way and all our neighboring galaxies. So our galaxies aren't even moving apart. Like, they say, well, all the galaxies are moving away from. No, they're not. No, they're accelerating. Our galaxies are moving toward this thing called the Great Attractor, which is in the Norma cluster. So if you go out in the night sky at night and you look into the Milky Way on the other side, that's where the Great Attractor is. That's where we're heading. And
Wow, the great quantum huge black hole.
Yeah, it's like
Galaxy controller, the great
10 to the
attractor. I love it.
15th solar masses in size, whatever this thing is there, and there's a cluster of galaxies around it, and they're falling toward it.
And if you think of space, right, you've got all these different dimensions. In fact, not in fact, but I read an article recently about the CERN and them discovering that we live in an 11-dimensional universe or something. I won't even get into trying to explain it. But if you think of a major great attractor, and you've got all these galaxies all around it, and it's pulling them all, they would collide. They would hit each other and stuff
We're
like
not
that.
actually, what I found and what I have in my book states that we're not actually expanding universe. If you look to wherever they've plotted these other galaxies that are moving away, if you
Yeah.
look beyond them, you'll find in each case they're being pulled in. That's why they're accelerating. The acceleration is not due to a magical dark energy or space magically coming apart. No, they're falling into gravity, a known force and there's astronomers out there pounding their fists and yelling, hey, we're plotting more and more of the directions of all these galaxies and stuff, and these big giant black holes are all over the place.
So it's possible we're in the Great Collapse right now and
We're
not the
in the
Great
collapse
Expansion?
side. We're in the end game,
That's
not the
crazy.
expansion. All these accelerations are due to the fact that these gigantic galaxies like ours are getting pulled in.
Have they found more than one great attractor, or has there only been one discovery so far of this source
Oh, yeah,
of
there's more
gravity?
than one.
There's more
The
than
the
one.
great attractor is getting pulled into an even larger one in the Shapley supercluster.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
that is getting pulled to this even bigger one. So our galaxy that's moving around, oh geez, our solar system is moving around 515,000 miles per hour. Our galaxy is moving at 1.3 million miles an hour toward that black hole.
Toward that thing. Oh
The
my gosh.
gravity never gives up. It never stops pulling.
What is it?
Well,
What
that's
is
the question I had. What is gravity? It was postulated a long time ago that there was a graviton particle. Do you believe in
right?
the graviton particle? Is that, does that exist, or is it something else?
They've never found it, and I don't think they're going to find it. In my book, I detail. There's another paper I have on ResearchGate that gives the mathematics that describes how gravity is created. So now I'm going to tell you exactly how gravity is created and what it is. So if you imagine inside, let me bring this up for you. This thing, I get my, hopefully we can see it.
Ooh.
This trefoil. The three quarks are traveling in this pattern inside of every atom in the universe. Now, this thing isn't just stationary like this. The three quarks are moving in a trefoil knot pattern. They're spinning and rolling. And what that means is that this becomes a sphere that's rapidly rotating and precessing. That's the cause of gravity. What that what defines that, how I figured that out, was the same way that Einstein, he was looking for it. He didn't know about the quarks. I had the advantage of knowing about the quarks. So now I could figure and compute how the quarks generate all of the mass of the neutron and the proton. And I used the formulas to predict the mass of the neutron and proton precisely. I've got evidence, and
Have
I've got
you
math that you can calculate and demonstrate.
What was that thing called that you just showed?
The trefoil
The
knot pattern.
trefoil.
Now, where
Now
did
how
I
do
get
you
that idea
Yeah,
from?
yeah. Well, I think this is gonna lead to how UFOs work, but I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Eventually, but not quite yet, because that's a different type of gravity we're going to talk about when we go to
Okay.
UFOs.
Okay.
This gravity is contractive. And since this thing turns into a rapidly rotating sphere, approximately moving at 99% of the speed of light inside in that very tiny space, what we have is something that Einstein got very excited about, but he didn't know about the quarks, so he couldn't finish the model. And what it is the thing called the Ehrenfest paradox. And what is that?
Mhm.
Einstein followed the line of reasoning that began with the happiest thought of his life. Still at the Swiss Patent Office, he conducted one of his famous thought experiments. Einstein imagined a circle spinning in space. Um, that circle, the center of that circle did not move, but its circumference was moving quickly in a circular direction. Einstein compared what happens in several reference frames, a standard tool he had used in developing the special relativity theory. He concluded, underline this in your mind, he concluded using the special relativity that the boundary of the disk contracted as it spun. There was a force acting on the circle at the boundary, the centrifugal force, and its action was analogous to that of the gravitational force. But that same contraction that affected the outer circle left the diameter unchanged. Thus, Einstein concluded in a way that surprised even him, the ratio of the circle to the diameter was no longer pi. He deduced that in the presence of a gravitational field, the geometry of space was non-Euclidean, which means it bends. It bends
Right.
inward
Right.
due to that sphere spinning around rapidly, pulling space toward it in all directions.
So
It
we're talking
contracts.
about so
Well-
that thing that you showed, are you talking about a black hole when you talk about that thing?
That's
No.
not a black
Where
hole.
does that thing
It's
exist?
the-
Everywhere in space?
That's inside of the neutron and proton, the three quarks, the up and down quarks that are moving inside of the neutrons and protons. That's what makes up the neutron and proton.
It's what makes up the field?
It's what
All
makes
those?
up the thing we call a neutron and a proton. Really,
Okay.
inside of it, these things are buzzing around at 99% the speed of light. And that motion is the unbalanced charges. Uh, Unbalanced charges and accelerated motion is the cause of gravity, the contraction of
Right.
space.
And
I
that's the
remember
difference
that.
between special relativity and general relativity is gravity. That's the difference.
Well, he found the loop. Well, Ehrenfest and Max Born before him discovered this idea, and then Einstein saw it and got real excited and say, "Hey,
Yep.
now I have a way of generating gravity. I could tell you what it really is."
Exactly.
And so you're saying that all these particles and the field generate gravity, or just all these particles generate gravity?
Even electrons, they move in orbitals.
Yep.
Their accelerated motion of
Everything's
unbalanced
doing that.
charges causes space to contract as they move. When you move in a circle, that's accelerated motion. And Einstein's equivalency principle stated that somehow acceleration and gravity are the same thing. I've linked that. I've proven
So
it to be correct.
that thing that he talked about, that point in the middle of the thought experiment that didn't move, it doesn't make sense to me. But when you showed me your model, that makes sense to me, that the middle would be more something
The middle
like
is
that
basically
would always be moving.
like in a merry-go-round. If you could shrink even smaller and smaller to your point,
So
a
you
little
were at
tiny
one point.
you're
To a plank
essentially,
space. A plank space.
A
yeah,
plank space.
that part is moving the slowest or not at all.
Right.
The action is really at the perimeter. That's
So
what
is
makes
that
it all
what
happen.
we, speed is relative, right? So is that what we measure speed by? I mean, when we say we're milling, our galaxy is moving at a million, however many miles towards the great attractor. What is it all
We're
relative to?
measuring relative to other objects in the universe.
Always some other object.
Maybe doing Doppler
There isn't like a thing
shifts.
like on Earth, like times the spatial center over in
See, now
Europe.
you're
where we-
working in your head like you're thinking like Lorenz,
Yeah.
Einstein's
Right.
mentor. He says there's got to be.
There's
He
gotta
said the
be
ether
something.
is an absolute motionless thing, and because they botched the Michelson-Morley experiment and failed to find the ether wind, they just
They gave
said,
up on the ether.
according, especially Einstein, who put special wording in his special relativity paper, which, by the way, comes out just a few months before the final announcement of the Michelson-Morley experiment. And he says in his paper, I don't need an ether. Oh, really? All your Lorentz transformations were built on the ether model theory. Lorentz transformations, ether model. So now you're at the last second, you're going to say there's no ether and it's only velocities relative to each other that count? No. He
That
knew
was a question. Yeah. That was a question I
he
had for Manu because he was on Star Trek. He was on that little Voyager ship. And every time I heard them say, bring the ship to a complete stop, it was always in my head, a complete stop relative to what, relative to the planet you're coming towards, relative to the solar system, relative to the galaxy you're in. Is there a universal complete stop? Like, what is a
Look,
complete
it's
stop?
very
there is
Relative
a
to
the
what?
way
answer is
there is
very
a way to
simple.
tell.
I
There is
looked
a way
out this window of the spaceship in Star Trek. It is a
Like, what is a
field.
full stop in
It
a
is a
spaceship?
it is a field of stars that they put little lights on, and then they hang a curtain.
I mean,
So it
yeah,
is
Mark said,
absolutely a flat
if the
space.
starship was at a full stop, the galaxy would be moving past it at 1,000,000 miles an
The
hour, right? If
starship
the
is
starship,
already moving at however many millions of miles an hour the Earth is spinning,
right, right.
come on.
Yeah, that's the big confusing thing in physics about
Yeah.
motion. You guys are hitting on it.
Yeah.
You're joking, but it's really hard
But
to
is
figure out.
there? Yeah. Is it this
Is there
field?
an absolute?
Is
Yes,
there an
there is a
absolute
way
thing?
to tell. Lorenz said to Einstein, "You sure you want to commit light to an absolute speed?"
Yeah, right.
There
Because they can
is a
slow it down
way.
and all that now, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, that's in my book too. There's a big controversy about that. There is a way to tell. If you go out into space with a atomic clock and you start to either accelerate or decelerate, and you have a way to monitor that clock rate as you come to a complete stop relative to the absolutely motionless space, that clock will go faster, ever so slightly faster. When you get it to go at the fastest rate possible, you're at a complete stop relative to the ether. And you have to be away from gravitational fields because that slows it down. So the more you're accelerating and moving in any direction, that clock rate is going to be different than something that's moving much slower. So that's the only, and that's tricky to do, by the way, because I did mine experiments and I thought, okay, we'll send out rockets going in all different directions, right? And we'll monitor the clock rates. The one that's moving the fastest, that's the one we keep sending out rockets from.
I get what you're saying, right? Because time slows down with acceleration, so the fastest moving clock has no acceleration.
Right. Yeah, when even if your rocket is accelerating against the motion of our galaxy, which is going
Right,
at
right,
600, you have to cancel that. So you got to accelerate in reverse of that.
right, right. The
And,
fastest moving clock has the least amount of acceleration
right,
because of time dilation.
right,
You
exactly
guys are
right.
both in the CIA.
No,
That's
I get
exactly
what he's saying. I get what he's saying. I'd
he's
never thought of that before, and that's
he's
brilliant.
absolutely
It's
right.
actually brilliant.
I love how
Well,
you assume that I don't get it.
I
I
think
didn't say you don't get it.
You're right, though. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
we'll trust us on that one. Then.
Yeah. But so, yeah, you tried to explain. That one went way right over my head.
What?
Because I
I'll do
like
it
that
again.
there's a Greenwich Mean Time that we're all adjusting our clocks to, and that kind of makes some sense to me. But this idea of what are all the different speeds in the universe relative based on. Relative to what, they're always something else, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
you guys
that's the way
you guys just
physics
had a
works.
moment where you understood it,
Yeah,
but I didn't.
well, we're going somewhere where you're not even dangerous thoughts. It's since the
Yeah,
name of the
that's
show.
the show. It's true.
What we're talking about is dangerous thoughts in the world of physics. They don't like the idea of an ether.
Yeah.
Most of them will throw it. There's some I've met physicists that are on board with it because it really makes sense when you talk about general relativity. If Einstein says it himself that there is an ether, even though many times he goes the other way. But in his speech to Lorenz in 1920 in Leiden, he says about the ether and general relativity, he says this: recapitulating, we may say that according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an ether. And he goes on to explain in detail why he thinks that, because there is evidence.
So this is a big argument in modern physics, whether whether the ether exists or not. And what are they
Right.
looking for to prove whether it does or it doesn't?
Well,
Or is 90% of the physicists on this idea that there's no ether?
Well, and is the ether comparable to the fabric of space-time, which is what Einstein postulated, right?
Yes, it is in a way. He made it a 4-dimensional space-time, giving time a dimension of its own. But
Right.
But he also said, like I believe, time really isn't real.
No,
What
it's
we're
something we
really
come up with because we live and die, and we
Well,
got beginning and end and all that shit.
time only exists because there is distance. Distance equals rate times time. If there was really nothing out there, let's say between the sun and the earth, let's go with the physicist theory of a void empty of everything except little particles whizzing by. That stuff, that space is not a fabric. It's not anything. It's nothing. Well, let's play with that. What's the value for something that's considered to be nothing? 0. Okay, let's plug that into the equation and let's see what we get. Let's say there's nothing between us and the sun. Then why does it take 8.5 minutes for light to get to? It's obviously traversing across or within
distance.
something.
Yeah.
So that means that distance has a density and it's real. And the proof is it takes time for light to travel across the universe. And it just goes on. And then light has, and space has properties of permittivity and permeability, which
what's permittivity? Permeability makes sense to me. You can go through it, right?
No, permittivity and permittivity has to do with the electrostatic field and how it forms and its resistance as it moves through space. Permeability has to do with the magnetic field and how it forms and how it is resisted. I've read the definitions many times. There's not any really clear ones, but that's the gist of it.
But the magnetic field in space, does it exist in the fabric or just outside of planets? Like, it seems like Earth's magnetic field, does it go on forever, or is it only within a certain distance?
The fields technically go forever, but they become weaker and weaker and weaker. But as you drill down into the space, into tinier points, everything is connected. So all the vibrations that are coming into any region of space, they're all coming at the speed of light, gravitational field, the electromagnetic fields, whatever. And so that space is always constantly rippling like a foam or something.
Everything's always moving.
It's
We're
all
always a
connected.
reflection of something else because light's permeating all of it.
Yeah, the reason we don't experience it all at once, which would be nightmarish in the physical realm, is because there's a speed limit. And so now time emerges.
I was going to say, if you stopped, that could cause some problems, you'd think.
Yeah. Well, if you're using the
like
slip wave.
Yeah, like if you were in a ship and everything else is moving at all these speeds and you decided to actually come to a physical stop, if that's possible, you'd think that would be a bad idea, I would think.
Well, the reason, now let's get into that a little bit. The reason why UFOs, the bodies aren't all splattered on the inside of the UFOs is because their inertia is canceled due to the fact of the force field, the spatial bias field that they are
the craft
within.
itself makes almost like an airplane.
Its own environment.
Yeah, right. So it's not like pressurized, but in an airplane you're pressurized, right? I'm just making the analogy of like in a UFO, they create a field that's not only pressurized, but outside of all the speeds and anything outside of that craft doesn't affect the field that's inside, right?
Well, if you're sitting in the middle of this field in the UFO, you're feeling the only you make a joke there, but it's not entirely wrong.
Yeah.
The field pulls space apart. I'm talking about the slip wave with the technology I believe they use. Pulls space apart and thins it out, so permittivity and permeability drop. Inertia can't work without those two around. And so what happens is you're in your own realm now. So the only gravity you feel is coming from the emitter that's on the top side of the gravity wave emitters, and on the bottom side is the anti-gravity side. So now as you're moving, let's say 10,000 miles an hour across parallel to the Earth's surface, if you were in a regular jet that doesn't have this spatial bias field and you stop, you're mush.
Flat. Yeah.
But you can
Right.
do that in a UFO, and it's like you're not even moving at all. If you don't have a window out there to look, you would have no idea you stopped.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. You have to eliminate, separate away from inertia, or else you're dead. And that's what the field does automatically, perfectly.
Now
Just
look,
this
I've
field-
seen the Bob Lazar
Go ahead.
documentary. Go ahead, Tyson. I'm sorry. I've
Well,
seen
I
the
was gonna.
and he talks
Go ahead.
about the gravity emitters and what's on top and below. You're smarter than me. Go ahead, ask the question.
Well, we had talked several shows ago about transmedium objects that go through water, through air, through space. Is this field impacted by density? Because the density in space versus the density in atmosphere versus the density in liquid,
the
are quite different.
Fortunately, the repulsive force, basically, there's a region near I believe, and without being able to examine a UFO up close and personal, I can't verify for sure, but I believe what's happening is there's a vacuum bubble forming around wherever the anti-gravity field is, or the whole slip wave field. So there's an evacuation of density, around it, so it can move through it. It's like the air's not even noticing it, because there's this bubble of almost nothing at all moving through it with no resistance. That's why it doesn't make a sonic boom.
That's why the subs are tracking these things going.
Yeah, so it can hit the water, and the same
do.
thing happens in the water.
Yeah,
it's like
it literally is a force field that they're inside of.
Yeah, and this thing can.
Well, is it a space bubble outside of space time? The reason I ask is if that's the case, then it could go actually through the core of the Earth. I mean, it could be completely solid.
And they've been seen doing this. They've been seen doing that.
I have heard in a testimony from people that have been on board or claim they have, that it can go right through the center of the planet.
Yeah. And look at the guys on, just Skinwalker Ranch. They put their GPS on. They're messing with that field at around 5,000 feet that they think is a portal of some kind, and their GPS tracked them going way down into the earth and coming way back out. And they didn't feel it.
They're
They didn't
not
know what happened
screwing
to
around
them.
or whatever, and I don't know.
Yeah,
because,
who knows?
This is a show for TV, so
Sure.
anything goes.
But for 20 years, it was actually a sponsored.
A real thing.
Yeah, I mean NASA and real government money went to
so thoroughly mastered the technology. The alien, you have to realize they're not just a few years ahead of us.
Millions and millions,
millions, and tens and thousands, 100,000, millions, and who knows? There may be a few out there, a billion or more. Can you imagine?
Well, how far does that? How far does that go? Could an alien spacecraft come up to the event horizon of a black hole? I mean, if gravity is no longer an issue, then a black hole is nothing, right?
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what I talk about in the book. I says, hey, we could send probes beneath the event horizon.
Maybe that's how they're traveling, just popping out of black holes. Bang,
this
bang,
thing
bang.
is emitting a field that cancels gravity, so it would be under stress,
or creating its own little black hole.
So you could dip below it and see what's going on, and it would be pitch black. I guarantee you, all light would be pulling down toward it, and eventually you'd contact the surface, which would be very bad. If you contact
the surface of a black hole,
which is neutronium, which I talk about in my book as well.
Wow, cool. All right,
highly dense
Master of Reality, by the way, guys. Master of Reality by Mark Fiorentino, available on Amazon. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
I got to read this book. You got to send us this book. Come on.
Okay.
I'll pay for it. Even I want to read it.
Well, I'll order it from my site then.
I will. I'll get it. I'll get it from you.
I'll sign it.
Yeah, there you go. That's a deal.
Yeah, there is a way to touch the center of a black hole.
Cool. How?
I
die.
I invented a thing called the stellar converter, and the idea is you go in at the poles, the North and South Pole, because the black holes are all spinning, and you got to determine.
Well,
There'll be
from what we
there'll
said,
be
everything is,
yeah. You go
but they're
down
really spinning, right?
with these tubes of magnetic tubes, concentric rings, highly, they're pulsing a lot of current, mega amps, and you go down, you touch, so the magnetic field will touch at this North Pole and the South Pole, and as soon as it comes in contact with that neutronium, the pressure, that the gravitational pressure that's holding you there is released, and
Wouldn't
it
it wing you
rockets.
off somewhere? Yeah, that
No,
seems like it
no,
would.
the
No.
particles come through the middle of the device and shoot out at near the speed, or
Oof.
actually beyond the speed of light, and then slow down once they escape.
I don't know if
And
anybody else is picking up on this. It's becoming really erotic. Keep going.
well,
I'm
at the end of it all, and if you go into
At the end of it all, it's aliens and butt probes. Bottom
they've
line.
seen this in outer space, what I'm describing.
Oh yeah, with
right.
the ejections
yeah.
of the black hole. Yeah, you're
Oh,
right.
my
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, what are those things called
I've
way
seen
in
them.
deep space?
Yes.
Oh, now I can't.
Gamma bursts or whatever.
They're
Not gamma bursts.
not quasars.
Quasars, pulsars.
Is it quasar? Yeah,
I'm calculating neutrino trajectories. Hold on a second.
yeah, I think it's quasars.
Quasars.
And, they've seen the light that's coming out of the poles of the
Yeah.
and they
I've
looked
seen
at
that
it and they
picture.
measured it and they said, hey, it's the light itself is polarized. And why is that important? It's important because that's an indicator of an intense magnetic field. So they've already verified what I just said. If the only way you're going to take apart and dissolve a neutron star or a black hole is by doing what I just described, which is in the book.
Right.
And it takes that and then shoots neutrons out the top and the bottom. And the beauty of that is neutrons, when they go as single particles into outer space, within 15 minutes, they turn into a proton and an electron. And what is that?
That's
Hydrogen.
gravity.
It's
Well,
hydrogen.
sorry. Now, as it shoots out the pole, the spheroid of that pulsar eventually would begin to shrink, right? Because it's
Yeah,
ejecting
exactly.
material.
Yes. At some point, it would become unstable, and it may burst before.
Right.
Well, I thought that these black holes that we have pictures of shooting, jizzing out both sides. For you, Tyson.
The quasars.
Yeah, I thought those were only black holes that were like eating galaxies.
Well, one of the theories is there's a natural way to create this magnetic field at the north, not like I'm using a machine that a whole star system would generate and build to attack or attach to the poles and do this. There's another way.
Are
and
you
that
saying
is-
that possibly aliens can turn on and turn off black holes and create their own black holes and etc.?
Well, in order to harvest the neutrons then within 15 minutes turn into hydrogen. And if they gather that using another neutron star or a black hole, they can make a star with it. They could recycle the
Wow, so there could
neutron
literally
star.
be
They could build their own
thinking
star.
star makers, universe
So
builders.
really, a
Wow.
really tiny singularity. They could harness the singularity. Is that? Before we get
Man,
too
if I
much
could
deeper,
harness, I know, but if I could harness a singularity, oh man.
we got
Yeah.
5 minutes and we got some callers.
Yeah, let's take some callers. I'm sorry the show's so short. I really am enjoying this.
I could talk all night. Love
yeah,
it.
and we didn't get to anti-gravity machines or near-death experiences. I'm going to tell you, Mark, I almost did die, and I've shared this on the show a couple times, so I'll get through it really quick. But a couple of years ago, I got very, very, very close to death. I was dying. I was absolutely positive that it was an option. And when I was that close to death, I had this very strange experience where I saw a storybook open of the multiple dimensional lives that I was living, that my soul was living. And I don't know if it was my soul or the God, whatever you want to define God as, if it was my soul or God or both, but they were showing me all these different lives that my soul was living and all the different options that I had in this life, in this body, that I could take that night in order to live or die. And death was one of the choices. I decided not to die. But every time I got very close to death, I could feel what felt like something taking my essence, my spirit, soul, whatever you call it, like a record player skipping, like a black hole spinning, like it was, my soul was almost going to go out there to that power, that great attractor that is slinging or in charge of tethering us to these bodies that we call human. And I felt that record skipping of the universe of like, oh, you're not going to die. You're going to stay here and do this. No, you're going to die. Oh, here goes your soul. No, you're not going to die. This is what's going to happen. And I saw all these different options, and they were all based on the power of what my consciousness decided to do with my life. And it was showing me all these different things and choices that I would make, and et cetera, and how they would affect this.
Almost a moment of absolute clarity.
And this thing, God, my soul, it certainly didn't care about my moral dilemma of living and dying and what I'd done with this life wrong and what I'd done right. It was all love. That I could feel.
Yes.
I could feel this complete, total, I don't care how many times you blow it, dude. You're going to blow it a million more, but you're going to come back to me. And the great storybook is everlasting and eternal.
Yeah.
And I just saw it all. And I decided to stick around here because, what the heck?
Does hell exist? I mean, I hope not, but
I don't think so, honestly. I don't think so. But
it's a tricky thing because some people do experience it, but I believe
there's places that are really painful out there.
I believe that it's generated by your soul.
Yeah, me too.
It's not necessarily a real place, but it can be something that
your consciousness might stick yourself there for a while.
If you really don't want to believe in God, you have free will and choice. Even there, you can choose not to go to the light, right? And then maybe the other people who are made that choice might mess with you and pull you into something that's like hell, or you do something that isolates and separates yourself and it feels like hell. That's
and you might get stuck there for a while, but good news is time doesn't exist.
Time, a million years is like a second. So
hey, if I'm getting sucked there, it wouldn't be hell. Anyway, sorry, Manu made me say it.
Joke that's happened, and I'm the bad guy.
All right.
Okay. Let's take some callers. Who do we got first?
Dave. We got Dave.
Dave Prime. Ask Mark Fiorentino a little bit about his mind.
Well, I want to know, all this talk about black holes and stuff made me think of one of the scariest Disney movies ever, The Black Hole, where at the end they end up going into the black hole and end up spitting out of a white hole. What do you think of white holes? Is that in the book? Is that something that you've considered, or is that just a whole bunch of Hollywood hooey?
If it is, it's not in this dimension because we don't see any white holes. Nobody's ever actually seen a white hole. And according to my theory is that a black hole is not the singularity like they think of. It's really hyper condensed neutronium. So there's not a place you're going to out and out the other side again. It's not like this spiraling thing that comes and then shoots out somewhere else. It's simply, if you go into this, your matter, your energy are going to be ripped apart by the tidal effects of the gravitational field, and you're going to be impacted to the surface of the neutronium sphere. And that's it.
A bug on a windshield.
There's no, living in another universe. It's just simply over.
But we see these fizzes of light going out of these quasars, and aren't these black holes that are sending out all this stuff?
Those are quasars, or the energy is coming because of the magnetic field that's releasing the neutroniums at the north and south poles. And
what's it becoming, do you think?
Hydrogen.
Just plain old hydrogen.
Well, right. Now, prior to that accretion disk, we can see everything from the accretion disk prior to the event horizon, the accretion disk and onward, which is how we can, in fact, they recently took a photo of what kind of looks like a crescent almost. And so we can see everything from the event horizon to the accretion disk outward, just nothing beyond that event horizon. And
I don't know.
There was
Mark, you got a big brain and you've been studying this for a while. But my gut feeling is that black holes are transportational, that you don't just get sucked to the flatness. I think
Einstein said information isn't lost.
It's quantum. It's one way to find out. Jump on in, right? We're headed there anyway, right?
Is information lost in a black hole? What do you think, Mark? Is it lost in a black hole?
From my theory, I'd say yes. It's just, it becomes, the entropy drops to like zero.
In my
because everything is orderly.
Oh, okay. See, in my dumb, cartoon, done too many drugs brain, you come into a black hole, you could come out the other side a piano or an angel. It's quantum, right? It's a million possibilities in there, aren't there?
Well, that's why I want to send a probe, and I know how to send a probe.
Do you know how to get it out?
Yeah, as long as you did. Anti-gravitational field is intact, you can go down and you can go toward the center if you want. But my bet is there's the event horizon, and maybe only a few feet from that is the surface of the neutronium sphere. And when you contact that, it's going to be over in a hurry. There's going to be a massive explosion that goes boom, boom, and then
you don't have only a few feet. You don't think it's like
Well, you don't have to go all the way to Sagittarius A star. You can find a stellar mass black hole and test the experiment, right? You don't have to go all the way to the center of the galaxy.
In my theory, I say basically all stars are formed from neutronium spheres. All planets,
right.
In our planet, I'm making the claim that
you think we have a little neutronium sphere at the center of our planet?
Yes.
Wow. Don't get sucked out to a black hole on us, man. You know? See? COVID.
It's just a cold.
COVID caused cold. We were talking backstage.
More questions.
Yeah, more questions. Sorry. And Mark, you might, I don't know why, probably because I insulted your son, but I would love for you to come back. I really, really love talking about this stuff. And you've been a really excellent guest. This is a blast. I wish our show was longer. Do we have another guest, another listener that wanted to ask Mark a question? No one else. They bounced.
I have a question for Mark.
That's my bad. Tyson, thanks for starting the. I wouldn't have even got one person in here if you wouldn't have started.
When you sign Manu's book, I don't want you to sign it. I want you to get your cop son to sign the book and send it to Manu. That's what.
I'm coming for you.
That's what I want you to do.
Well, one of our regulars did have a question she put out there.
Okay, go ahead.
It's from our friend Katie in England that says, does relativity supersede string theory?
Ultimately, in the end, string theory is going to be turned out to be a huge waste of time.
Yep.
You think so?
Yep.
But it's extremely popular.
Well, is that the one that thinks that we're bread slices and the universes are all little slices of bread? And
well, yeah, there's many dimensions, and it gets incredibly complicated. The math is just mind-bendingly complicated.
Yeah. What was the vortex thing that it's actually been around since the beginning of time, that drawing, but yours was three-dimensional?
Oh, infinity? The infinity?
No, it was more than infinity. The thing that Mark shared with us.
Oh, the trefoil.
The
trefoil.
The trefoil. Yeah, that's more of a representation of infinity to me than just the two of them. That one's like, that's
it runs. The proton runs forever. The proton will never dissolve, never break up. It lasts for billions of years. Perfect. Just what the universe needs. The neutron dissolves, breaks up in 15 minutes. Perfect. When you start out with a universe and a big bang where it's nothing but neutronium sphere that expands and releases neutronium gas and the spheres, you have all the material you need to build an entire universe. All the elements, like on Earth, were built right here in the core of the Earth in a fusion process. And I've talked to scientists in Japan who made measurements to see if there is fusion process going on by detecting geoneutrinos, and they found them. There are A
What's a neutrino?
It's a neutrino that's coming from the center of the Earth. So either there's fusion going on or possibly fission. And I'm sure a lot of people will argue that, but I'm betting fusion. And that fusion is occurring because we have our own sphere that was born and came into this solar system along with the other planets that sucked up the hydrogen around them. They turned into brown dwarfs, eventually cooled, got surfaces, started generating all the elements because the fusion process builds hydrogen, then helium, then carbon, then silicon. Everything we made, everything that's here was manufactured here.
Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay, so what conventional thinking is that all of this material came from a supernova, right? Everything can do. But you're saying on a macro level, it could happen planetary rather than supernovae.
Yeah, how else can you guarantee
Wow.
life conform?
You
have to have all the
blew
elements.
my mind.
I'm telling you that we're going to read this book, and it's the last of my brain cells are going to be needed. But I want to read Master of Reality. Why do you call the book Master of Reality? And listen, Mark, people are not going to watch this show tonight live. It's a freaking Super Bowl, man. People care more about football. It's strange. Monkeys, we are. We're such monkeys. That's not the Super Bowl. That's the
playoffs.
NFC championships, and everybody's more into that than how reality works. I don't. Oh, that's sad. But
I have no opinion. I have no opinion at all. No opinion. Just saying. No opinion.
Hey, football.
I hope they stomp the Niners because the Niners won the NFC Championship game. I'm from Seattle, if you can't tell. So
modern day gladiators, man, just crazy stuff. So yeah, we didn't get into NDEs, but please, everybody, go check out Mark's book, Master of Reality. It's available on Amazon.com/Mark Fiorentino and a bunch of blah blah blah. Just look up Master of Reality by Mark Fiorentino. Also, you can go to his website, www.super- is that a dash?
Yes.
Yeah, super-relativity.com, and check out a lot of his stuff there. He's got a book trailer that you can look at, and check out his YouTube page. You got a YouTube page as well, yes?
Yeah, I put some of these shows, if they give me permission, I'll make a copy. I put it up there, or I make some of my own shows.
And can I give people your Facebook and your Twitter?
Yeah, I don't ever Facebook I do use, but Twitter I don't really use.
Okay, he's at Mark.Fiorentino, Fiore. You see our poster. You can see how to spell his name. .54 at Facebook if you want to ask this big mind some questions. I've really enjoyed talking to you, sir, and we're going to people will watch this show when they're done with the game, I'm sure. But I would love to have you on live again a few weeks down the road after I've read your book. That would be
would love that.
Fun. Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. That's fantastic, because I'm going to get on reading your book. It'll take me a couple months, and then we'll bring you back on.
Okay, great.
But this was a lot of fun. I actually would have ran the show for like hours doing this, but
I usually go 3 hours if they're up to it. When I'm on coast to coast or something like that, it goes 3 hours, and it's
I want to keep you here, and
it flies like that. 3 hours just
shoots by. George Norrie doesn't shut up. That's the problem. Anyway.
Well, our show is for an hour, but man, we could maybe do a special show after. Do you want to read? You're going to read Master of Reality too, right, Tyson?
Oh God, yes, yeah. I'm gonna get Mark's phone number. I'm gonna call him. We're gonna talk.
Excellent.
I don't know. I think people are really gonna like this show because I was fascinated the whole time. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see. I guess we're doing the wrap up, right? Yeah. I'm like the whole show. I'm just kind of sitting there looking into the camera and then looking at you, and then my brain's. I forgot that we were even having a show. I'm supposed to play the host. As soon as you start talking about these concepts, I'm not thinking about my present duties as Monumente Reme on Dangerous Thoughts. But what I really wanted to talk about is your idea of God and angels and near-death experiences and what the soul is. And
a lot of studying.
Yeah. Is some of that in the book as well?
That's going to be in another book. I stuck
Okay.
pretty much to science in this book, and I only very little bit of mention. Well, this thing comes from a near-death experience, and I sought this out because I knew that there had to be a geometry that's a dynamical geometry inside of the neutron and proton. So I went to the source, which is near-death people. Who better to ask this question than somebody who's talked to God, the creator? If you want to know how something works, talk to the creator of that something.
Yeah.
And this lady saw this, Claire Dennis is her name, and I knew immediately what it was. And I went to look. It's a series. It's a half a show, and I know we're out of time, but there's more to that story. How I found
we can
that.
finish this one. How about this? This is the last question. Let's talk about her and her experience.
Well, she died in a hot air balloon race, and because they went up too high, the guy wasn't paying attention. The altitude went too high. She lost consciousness. They did an emergency descent, and when they revived her, she saw God. She saw the creator. God told her, "I created everything. I am the source. I am the creator. I am the matter that forms energy." Or no, I am the energy that forms mass. It matches exactly my theory. And I says, I know what the trefoil pattern, because before I found her, I said, whatever the solution is, it's going to have a 3 in it. There's going to be a geometry in the shape of that has 3 somethings, and this has 3 branches on it.
So said Nikola Tesla too.
Yeah, 3 is a big number here. It's very important. And it had everything. And I says, that's the quarks moving inside of the neutron and proton. I now have the pattern. Then I could derive the equations using Newtonian equations. Ha, ha, ha. To the physicists out there.
Einstein.
It's been sitting there for all these years, and nobody ever dreamed of using those. Rank 2 tensors, which, by the way, Einstein predicted would be the type of equation that solves the problem.
Boom! And as soon as he talks about something actually important that explains everything in the universe, he gets cut off by the deep state.
There you go. There he is.
Yes, yeah. And then as soon as he laughs, they bring him back. See, there's somebody out there keeping these secrets from us. Thanks, Mark. It's been a blast talking to you. I can't wait to read your book. And everybody else that's listening this week, thanks for tuning in to Dangerous Thoughts with Manu and Tyson. Dave Prime, Subscription Pirate. Oh, you know what? I forgot to tell people how to talk to us. That's so stupid. But at the end of the show, I might as well tell you, if you want to talk to us next week, you want to be a guest on the show, you can go down to the link on our Discord, which is flashed below the screen a few times during this episode, or you can contact @Subscription Pirate on X. I'm going to say Twitter again. I can't stop saying it. It's Twitter X. Anyway, contact @Subscription Pirate on Twitter. Ask to come on the show, and during the question and answer segment, we'll let you ask our guest a question.
Hello.
And a real quick shout out, if I can, before we end the show. Follow Dave Prime, brand new series coming out this Tuesday called Technically Trek. I'm really excited about it, and you guys are going to love it.
Right
so
on.
Tuesday on X.
And
at 6 p.m. Pacific.
And on What's Up to Chris Leftwich. And by the way, everyone that sent prayers to Val, I was telling you last week, my lady was having some issues. She seems to be doing much better. Keep those prayers going, because the more conscious entities praying for you, the better chance you have. Mark Fiorentino, thanks so much. I'll see you guys next time on Dangerous Thoughts.